My parents mocked me at my sister's engagement dinner, saying, "You couldn't even get a job here." The head chef stepped forward, bowed, and said, "Sir, would you like us to serve the next course?" Their smug faces turned to horror. I never fit into my family. Not in the dramatic, black sheep way people like to talk about, but in the slow, quiet way where you realize you're just different. My parents, Hugh and Margaret, had a very clear definition of success. You go to college, pick a respected career, doctor, lawyer, CEO, make money, climb the social ladder, retire in luxury. That was the formula. And if you weren't following it, you were failing. My older sister, Charlotte, got the memo. Straight A student. Ivy League. Perfectly poised and put together. Now engaged to Wesley, a hedge fund guy with an expensive watch and a jawline that screamed I went to prep school and drive a car that costs more than your house. My parents adored him. And then there was me. Jared. I wasn't an a-hole. I did fine in school, but I never cared about boardrooms and business meetings. I cared about food. Cooking made sense to me in a way nothing else did. The precision of it, the creativity, the way a simple dish could make someone close their eyes and sigh because it was just that good, it felt like magic. But to my parents? It was a waste of time. When I told them I was moving to New York to go to culinary school, my dad scoffed. "So you're going to be a waiter?" My mother just sighed, shaking her head. "Well, I suppose someone has to cook for the important people." That was the beginning of the end. They never took my career seriously. Never asked about my work. Never visited, never supported me. They didn't even show up to my graduation. And after years of their condescension, I just stopped trying. I built my own life. Pushed myself through the grueling reality of restaurant kitchens. Worked my way up from scrubbing dishes at midnight to creating dishes that actual critics wrote about. By 30, I was the head chef at one of the most prestigious Michelin-starred restaurants in the city. And my parents? They had no idea. The invitation to Charlotte's engagement dinner came out of nowhere. I almost didn't go. It had been years since I'd seen them, and I already knew how it would go. Charlotte would be the star. My parents would beam at her, brag about her, celebrate her. And me? I'd be the afterthought. The disappointment. But some stupid part of me still wanted to go. Maybe I was hoping something had changed. Maybe I wanted to prove, to myself, more than them, that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. So, I went. Big mistake. The restaurant was insanely expensive. The kind where the menu didn't have prices because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The moment I walked in, I knew I had made a mistake. Not because I didn't belong there, but because my parents wanted me to feel like I didn't. The looks they gave me? That "oh, you actually showed up" expression? Yeah, that. My mother greeted me first, her lips pulling into a thin, forced smile. "Jared. Well. You look." Her eyes scanned my outfit, a nice, but simple button-down and dark jeans. "Casual." Charlotte smirked, sipping her champagne. "I'm shocked. I thought you were too busy, you know. Cooking." Wesley, standing beside her with his arm wrapped around her waist, chuckled. "Oh, that's right. You're in the food industry." I clenched my jaw but forced a polite smile. Something like that. Dinner was exactly what I expected. I sat there, silent, while my parents fawned over Charlotte and Wesley. They talked about their wedding venue, their honeymoon in Santorini, their future plans. And me? I got a few scraps of small talk. "Mom, so, Jared. Still in New York?" "Me, yep." "Dad, and you're?" "What, still working in a restaurant?" "Me, yep." End of conversation. I kept my mouth shut, just waiting for the night to be over. And then, right before dessert, my father decided to twist the knife. He took a sip of his wine and smirked. "You know, Jared, I was telling some colleagues about you the other day. They couldn't believe you left everything behind to be what was it? A line cook?" The table chuckled. My hands tightened around my napkin. Charlotte giggled. "You know, if you ever get tired of running around in a hot kitchen, Wesley's firm is always hiring. I'm sure they could find something for you." Wesley smirked. "Of course, we wouldn't expect you to understand the work, but I'm sure there's something. Entry level." The whole table laughed again. I was about to get up and leave. And then, a voice interrupted. "Sir, would you like us to serve the next course?" The head chef. The man I worked beside every single night. He stepped forward, his posture straight, his face unreadable. And then, to my parents' absolute horror, he turned to me, bowed slightly, and said, "Chef Jared, shall I have the kitchen send out your signature dessert?" Silence. Dead, horrified silence. I actually saw the color drain from my father's face. Charlotte's smirk vanished. My mother? She looked like she had swallowed her wine the wrong way. Wesley frowned, glancing between me and the chef. Wait. What? I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself to enjoy the moment. I smiled. Yes, I think they're ready for it. The chef nodded and disappeared back into the kitchen. For the first time all night, nobody knew what to say. My father cleared his throat. You work here? I picked up my wine glass, twirling it between my fingers. Not just work here. I run the kitchen. I let the words sink in before adding, I'm the head chef. Charlotte let out a nervous laugh. No, but... Seriously? I tilted my head. What's so hard to believe? Wesley shifted in his seat. Well, it's just, this is a Michelin-starred restaurant. People fly in from all over just to eat here. I took a slow sip of my wine, savoring the moment. Yeah. They do. My father, still struggling to process, gave a weak chuckle. Well, I suppose cooking isn't such a waste of time after all. I set my glass down and met his eyes. No, Dad. It never was. Just then, the waiters arrived with dessert, my signature dish, one I had spent years perfecting. Plates were placed in front of each guest with the kind of precision and care that only came from my kitchen. My parents, still stunned, picked up their forks. I watched as they took their first bite. And I saw it, the moment they realized that I was damn good at what I did. For once, they had nothing to say. And that silence? That was my revenge. For the first time in my life, I watched my parents struggle for words. It was almost comical. My father, usually so quick with his smug little jabs, suddenly found his vocabulary missing in action. My mother's carefully composed expression had cracked, her eyes darting around the table like she was trying to make sense of reality itself. Charlotte poked at her dessert, her lips pressed together in something that was almost a pout. Wesley, who had been so comfortable looking down his nose at me just minutes ago, suddenly seemed very interested in the pattern of the tablecloth. I let the silence sit. Let them stew in it. And then, finally, my father cleared his throat. Well, he started, forcing out a laugh. That's quite the surprise. I just smiled. Yeah. Imagine that. He nodded stiffly, like he was trying to convince himself that everything was fine. So, you're the head chef here. Yep. My mother straightened in her seat. For how long? Almost 3 years now. Another beat of silence. I could tell they were trying to figure out how to react. My father wanted to downplay it. My mother wanted to spin it into something she could claim as a family accomplishment. Charlotte just looked deeply annoyed that the attention had shifted from her. I decided to make things a little harder for them. I set my wine glass down and stretched a little, casually slipping in, oh, and by the way, we just got our second Michelin star last year. Wesley nearly choked on his drink. My father's eyes widened slightly before he caught himself. My mother blinked, clearly unfamiliar with what that even meant. Charlotte frowned, tilting her head. Wait, she said. You mean like that star thing they give to fancy restaurants? I chuckled. That's one way to put it. Wesley, recovering from his brief moment of shock, leaned forward slightly. Michelin stars are a big deal, he muttered, almost to himself. Like, a really big deal. I smiled. Yeah. They are. I saw the gears turning in his head. This guy was used to measuring people by status. And in his world, a Michelin-starred chef wasn't just a cook, it was a name. A reputation. Connections. For the first time, I was the person at the table that someone like Wesley couldn't just brush off. And that? That was satisfying. My father cleared his throat again, trying to regain control of the conversation. Well, Jared, I have to admit, this is unexpected. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah? He nodded, putting on his usual fatherly wisdom tone. You know, I always told you that hard work pays off. It's good to see you finally taking life seriously. I almost laughed. The audacity. Instead, I just leaned back in my chair, watching him. Taking life seriously? I echoed. He smiled like he was being generous. Well, you know what I mean. All that running around, cooking for. Well, I suppose it all led somewhere in the end. I set my fork down, my patience wearing thin. Dad, I've been taking my career seriously from the start. Just because it didn't fit into your idea of success doesn't mean it wasn't real. My mother let out a tight-lipped chuckle, trying to smooth things over. Oh, honey, we just wanted the best for you. You can't blame us for worrying when you chose such an unconventional path. I gave her a look. You weren't worried, Mom. You were embarrassed. Her face tightened. That's not true. I let out a slow breath, keeping my tone even. It is. You didn't come to my graduation. You never asked about my work. You never visited, not even once. It wasn't about worrying. It was about the fact that you didn't think what I did mattered. Charlotte rolled her eyes. Oh, my God. You're so dramatic. I turned to her, raising an eyebrow. Am I? She gestured around the restaurant. Look at you now. You're fine. You got what you wanted. So why are you still acting like a victim? I laughed, shaking my head. Charlotte, I never wanted an apology. I never expected you guys to change. But don't sit here and act like you supported me when you spent years treating me like a damn joke. She scoffed. Ugh, whatever. Wesley was still watching me, a thoughtful expression on his face. He suddenly seemed a lot less confident, like he was realizing he might have underestimated me. My father let out a long sigh, reaching for his wine glass. Well, he said, I suppose at the end of the day, family is family. That's what matters, right? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I glanced around the table, really looking at them. My mother, still grasping for control. My father, trying to rewrite history in his favor. Charlotte, stewing in her own annoyance. For so long, I had wanted their approval. Even when I told myself I didn't care, some stupid part of me had still wanted them to be proud. But sitting there, watching them struggle to adjust to this new reality where I wasn't the family failure, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, I didn't need their validation. I was already successful. Already respected. Already more than they had ever given me credit for. And whether they accepted it or not, didn't matter anymore. I picked up my wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid inside, and finally said, yeah, Dad. I guess we'll see about that. I took a slow sip, savoring the silence that followed. Because for the first time, I had nothing to prove. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. My parents had spent years looking down on me, dismissing my passion as a silly hobby, something beneath the family's so-called standards. But now, they were sitting in a restaurant where I was the damn head chef, and they couldn't even hide their discomfort. And that was enough for me. For years, I had wanted their approval. Their respect. Some acknowledgement that I wasn't just some failure they had to tolerate at family gatherings. But watching them scramble to process the truth, I realized something. I didn't need it anymore. The waitstaff moved gracefully around the table, topping off wine glasses and clearing away empty plates. My signature dessert sat half-eaten in front of my parents, Charlotte, and Wesley, not because it wasn't good, but because they were too stunned to eat. Finally, my father let out a slow breath. Well, Jared, he said, forcing an awkward smile. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting this. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah? He nodded, like he was trying to get control of the conversation again. It's impressive, I suppose. Not the path I would have chosen for you, but you've clearly done well for yourself. Ah. There it was. Even now, he couldn't just say you were right. We were wrong. No, he had to keep his fatherly wisdom act going, pretending like he had been guiding me toward success all along. I wasn't going to let him have that. I leaned back in my chair, swirling the wine in my glass. Yeah. I have. His smile faltered. He had expected me to take the bait, to say, thank you, Dad, and give him the satisfaction of feeling like he still held authority over me. Instead, I let him sit in his own discomfort. Charlotte, still irritated that the night wasn't all about her, rolled her eyes and picked at her dessert. Okay, fine. You have a real job or whatever. Can we move on now? I smirked. Sure, Charlotte. We can move on. But first, how's your wedding catering coming along? She blinked. What? I shrugged. I assume you're getting food catered for the reception. Have you picked a place yet? She sighed dramatically. Not yet. The venue has some partnerships, but nothing really special. We were actually still looking for something high-end. Oh, I said casually, you should have just asked me. I could have given you a recommendation. She scoffed. Yeah, okay. Thanks, but I think we'll stick to real caterers. I grinned. Funny. I actually know most of the real caterers in the city. You'd be surprised how many of them trained under me. Charlotte's smirk faded just a little. Wesley perked up slightly, a thoughtful look on his face. Wait. Does your restaurant do private events? I nodded. For the right price, yeah. His eyes lit up, and I knew exactly what was happening. Wesley was the type of guy who collected status symbols. Fancy watches, expensive cars, exclusive clubs, and having his wedding food prepared by a Michelin-starred chef? That would be the ultimate flex. Charlotte caught the look on his face and frowned. Wesley, that's actually not a bad idea, He interrupted. Jared, do you think we could set up a tasting? Charlotte's jaw dropped. You can't be serious. He gave her a look. Char, this place is one of the best in the country. You wanted something exclusive, right? She looked like she had just swallowed a lemon. She hated this. The idea of me being a part of her perfect wedding? Unacceptable. I let the moment drag out before shrugging. Well, I don't know if we'd be available. We're pretty selective with private bookings. Wesley, eager now, straightened up. Oh, we'd obviously pay top dollar. Whatever the cost, it's worth it for something this exclusive. I smirked. That so? Charlotte kicked him under the table. He flinched. I could see the internal war happening on her face. She didn't want my help. She wanted to keep treating me like the failure she'd always assumed I was. But at the same time, she wanted the best. And now, she had to sit with the fact that I was the best. I took a sip of my wine, dragging out the silence. Tell you what, I said finally. I'll think about it. Charlotte let out a huff. Oh, come on. I turned to her, all innocence. Something wrong? She clenched her jaw, forcing out, you're being in BTT. I grinned. No, Charlotte. I'm just finally playing the game the way you and Mom and Dad have played it my whole life. I leaned in slightly. And you don't like it, do you? Her face turned red. Wesley, oblivious to the family tension, laughed. Well, I hope you do consider it, Jared. Having a Michelin-starred chef at the wedding would really be something special, I chuckled. Oh, trust me, Wesley. It would be unforgettable. Charlotte shot me a glare, knowing damn well she'd just been outplayed. My father, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly spoke up again. Jared. I glanced at him. He sighed, rubbing his temple. Look. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye. And maybe we didn't handle things the right way when you were younger. I stayed silent. He exhaled sharply. But regardless of all that, you're still my son. And I'd like to rebuild our relationship. My mother nodded, her expression carefully neutral. We do love you, dear. She waved a hand vaguely. We didn't understand. I studied them both. For the first time, I saw hesitation in my father's eyes. He wasn't used to this, being on the back foot, needing something from me. And my mother? She was calculating. Not quite regretful, but aware that I was no longer someone they could just brush aside. Maybe they really did want to reconnect. Maybe they were just trying to save face. Either way, it didn't matter. Because I wasn't doing this for them. I smiled, tilting my glass toward them in a mock toast. Well, I guess we'll see. Then I finished my wine, savoring the taste of winning. The drive home that night felt different. For years, I had convinced myself that one day, I'd finally prove to my parents that I was worth something. That if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, they'd finally look at me with pride instead of disappointment. But sitting there, watching them squirm, I realized something that should have been obvious all along. Their approval didn't matter anymore. I had built a life for myself, one that I was proud of. I didn't need their validation, their reluctant nods, their half-assed attempts at pretending they had supported me all along. I was already more successful than they had ever expected me to be. And now, they knew it. A few weeks later, I got an email from Wesley. Subject, wedding catering inquiry. Hey Jared, hope you're doing well. Charlotte and I were wondering if we could set up a tasting for the wedding. We'd love to have your team handle the catering. Your restaurant is incredible, and it would mean a lot to have family involved. Let me know your rates. Best, Wesley. I sat back in my chair, smirking. Oh, how the tables had turned. I could have ignored the email. Could have said no outright. But where was the fun in that? I sent back a very polite response, inviting them to the restaurant for a private tasting, on my terms. I let them wine and dine, let them experience the full VIP treatment, the way our most exclusive clients did. Then, when the time came to discuss pricing, I slid the contract across the table with a very specific clause. A non-refundable deposit. And a final decision deadline. If they backed out, they'd lose every penny. Charlotte hesitated, shooting me a glare, but Wesley, oh, sweet, status-obsessed Wesley, jumped at the opportunity. Let's do it, he said, grinning. This is going to be the most talked about wedding of the year. Oh, Wesley. If only you knew. Fast forward to the big day. The venue? Gorgeous. A stunning estate with floral arrangements that probably cost more than my first apartment. The guests? A who's who of high society, dressed to impress. And the catering? Flawless. My team executed every course with perfection, the flavors, the presentation, the service, chef's kiss. People were raving about the food, complimenting Charlotte and Wesley for their incredible choice in hiring us. And then, just before the main course, I made my move. I approached Charlotte, who was standing near the head table, looking absolutely radiant in her designer gown. She turned, forcing a tight smile when she saw me. "What do you want?" she muttered. I grinned. "Just thought I'd check in. Everything up to your standards?" She rolled her eyes. "Yes, fine, whatever." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough so only she could hear. "You know, it's funny. After all these years, you finally ended up in a room full of people singing my praises." Her jaw clenched. I smirked. "Guess that real job paid off, huh?" Her eyes flashed with irritation, but before she could respond, Wesley, ever the clueless showman, clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Jared, my man. Everyone loves the food. Seriously, best decision we made. You're a genius." I smiled at him, then turned back to Charlotte. "Yeah. Imagine that." And with that, I walked away, leaving her to fume in silence. Victory never tasted so sweet.
الغنوة اللي جاية دي حضراتكم هقولوها معايا، يعني انتوا رغبتكم، بس انتوا اول ما هتسمعوها هتعرفوا. انما انا عايز اقول لكم هي كلمات مين؟ هي كلمات الدكتور مدحت العدل والحان خالد حماد وتوزيعه برضه. هنغنيها اول ما تسمعوا الدخول هتغنوا معانا على طول.